Here, the two top teams with the two top home team records made it into the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl is tomorrow, for those who don't know, but here in the U.S., the Super Bowl is tomorrow. The two top teams with the two best home records made it into the Super Bowl, and that often is the case, more often than not. And when you have a good home, man, you can have a great ministry, you can have a great business, you can have great kids, because everything is functioning. The home is the central part of everything that you do and everything that you get involved in. It's the home. And so it's a covenant, and you have to be willing to pay the cost that it requires to develop a good home team in order for you to have a good marriage, because that's your core. The home team is the core team. And then the second thing we talked about with marriage as a covenant is where we will begin today again. It will cost you trust. It will cost you trust. Trusting in the way of the kingdom, trusting in the covenant. And to really trust in someone, or trust in a relationship, or trust in marriage, or trust in covenant, you have to trust in God. You have to trust in God. Now, I know we're super smart today. We pretend we don't need God. Matter of fact, we now determine who God is, as if God cannot determine who he is for himself. So we ridicule the Word of God, we ridicule the Bible, we ridicule Christians, and as Christians, sometimes we mess up big time. Preachers, ministers, people going to church on Sunday and coming home beating their wives or cheating on their husbands. So yeah, we mess up. We're guilty. Christians are guilty. But in order for you to have the best in life, the things that God has for you, and when I say best, I want you to understand, think with me from the Bible, from the scriptures. The best comes from God. The best comes from God. Your life that you're trying to live, God had one planned out for you. It was beautiful. And every time you make a decision that takes you off of that path that God has for you, you minimize or you reduce your ability to have the best life. The prodigal son is a very good example. His father loved him. His father wanted the best for him. But he was a young man like... He was a young man that was like most of the young men today. He wanted to go out there and experience life. He wanted to go out there and live the life, enjoy himself. What's up, brothers, here? I got some money, man. Let's go get some honeys, man. Let's go to, what they call, rain. Let's rain some money and all that foolishness. So he went out to a far country, the Bible said. And that's what you do when you turn from God's path for your life. You go into a very far country, a place where pigs live better than you. The Bible said he got to such a point that he was feeding pigs and looking at what the pigs were eating and was hungry. Mm. You got to be real low to go from living in a place where people bring you breakfast in bed to go to feeding pigs and wanting what the pigs are eating. Have you ever seen what a pig eats? When I was a little boy, we used to have pigs in the backyard. We had a lady called Miss Daisy. She used to raise pigs. She had this big black pig, a huge, man, I was afraid of that pig. That pig was from about here to the wall. The mother pig, Lucy, that was her name, Lucy. Huge pig. And they ate, nasty. They ate anything. That's why I don't like pork. They ate anything. Anything. And he was getting hungry off of the junk that a pig was eating. And when you deviate from what God has for you, you can go into a far country and proverbially start feeding pigs and get so low that you hunger for pig food. A lot of people hungry for pig food today in another way, that pork. Anyway, you can eat what you want. The Bible says you can eat, just bless it. I just don't like it. All right. Anyway, so you got to trust in God. Yes, Christians, we have our issues, but you got to trust in God. So the man in the parable had to trust God so much that he was willing to sell all that he had. Now listen to this now. Everything that he had to sell, he sold it. So if he had a house, he sold it. If he had fields, he sold it. If he had a business, he sold it. If he had a TV, he sold it. Whatever he had to sell, he sold, just so that he can have enough to buy the field. Because what he realized was, what was in the field, the treasure that was in the field, was worth more than everything that he already had right now to sell. So even if what he sold cost $100,000, and he came up with $100,000 and bought the field, what was in the field, the treasure, was worth way more than $100,000. You know, the funny thing is, the field wasn't even his. It belonged to someone else who did not see treasure in the field. That just to me just stands out. You own a field with treasure. And this happens all the time, because there are men, I like to analyze it to man and woman relationships. There are men who have women in their lives, and she's loaded with treasure, loaded with everything God has for you. But because you don't know what you have, you end up losing a treasure and giving up your field and just selling out what you have to somebody else and he's not even telling you, I'm seeing treasure in your field. And even if he told you that, because I know some guys, even if you tell them, man, you have a good wife, you have a good woman, man, why you chasing the streets? Why are you chasing that other woman, man? You got a good woman at the house. They don't care. Man, we can't get along, man. She don't do what I want. You know, whatever, man. And you give up a treasure that's worth more than that little girlfriend you have on the side that's going to leave you eventually. And you go and you lose your home, your family, your wife, your children, everything for that girl on the street. And that's why we're going to talk today about, are you an infidel or an investor? Are you an infidel or an investor? Because there is no covenant without trust. I want to read 1 Timothy 5:8. There is no covenant. I'm telling you, if you don't trust a person, you cannot be in covenant with them. The Bible says, how can two walk together unless they be agreed? Amos 3:3. Amos 3, chapter 3, verse 3. How can you walk with someone if you're not in agreement with them? This is what 1 Timothy 5:8 says. If anyone fails to provide for his relatives, and especially for those of his own family, he has disowned the faith by failing to accompany it with fruits, and is worse than an infidel or an unbeliever who performs his obligations in these matters. So Paul is saying to Timothy, listen, Timothy, excuse me, tell the men in the church. Now this specifically is talking about the man part, okay? This is important for men. Men should hear this. And ladies, you should share this to some men that you need to understand about infidelity and infidels and investing. If you don't provide for your relatives. So, number one, it's saying that you have the right as a man to bring forth provision for those that are in your life. A man should always be looking beyond. He should always be looking to go above and beyond where he is. It is his responsibility to provide. It is his responsibility to provide. I remember that there's a part in the movie called John Q, where the wife tells Denzel Washington, her question is, the son is sick, he's dying, and so she tells him, do whatever you have to do. Whatever you have to do. Take care of our son. Just that part of that movie touches me, because it says, as a man, as a father, it is your responsibility to do whatever you have to do to take care of your children. Now, when they become adults, the roles change a little bit, but in between birth, or even before birth, to when they become adults, that's your responsibility, to speak wisdom, to give them what they need to resolve issues, to show them how to live. You're preparing them for life. Put the wisdom inside of them. Put that, and a man ought to provide for his relatives. Sometimes you don't have kids, but you have nieces, you have nephews, you have other relatives in your life, man, woman, brothers, sisters, cousins. Provide. Even if all you have to provide is a word of wisdom, mouth control. If you have the ability to provide that, then provide that for your relatives. And it says, especially for those of his own family. in your own house, you ought to be a provider, not an abuser, not a loser, not someone that avoids your responsibility. You ought to be a person that says, you know what, I am going to take responsibility to provide for my own family. It says own family. That means this is a family you built. You went and got the woman. You had the kids. And even if you went and got her and she had kids, you brought her. If you bring her and she has kids, they're now your responsibility. Provide for your own family. It says, you have disowned the faith. You have disowned the faith. That Paul is saying, you ain't even right to be in church. You ought not to be in the house of God if this is what you're doing. You don't even take care of your own house. That's why when there are pastors, preachers, male or female, mostly male, that are having issues at home, a lot of times their superiors will tell them, sit down. You need to fix what's going on in your house first before you come and try to run the house of God. But, of course, in this day and age where people want to do what they want to do, they go forth and they do what they want to do anyway. They run the church, they still pastoring, they're still teaching, still doing what they want while their house is falling apart. And I can't get with that. I can't get with that. As I said earlier, we're going to start ministry in May, and I'm telling you right now, if my house is falling apart, I'm not coming up in the church and telling you what to do. I need to go fix my house first. That's why you need to have other people that can minister to the flock while you sit your tail down and get some counseling and figure out, okay, how do I fix this thing? And not only that, back up a little bit. Make the decision to choose the person who will be best for you, the person that comes from God. That helps a whole lot, because if you wait on God to provide you the treasure, that way when the pressure comes, you can always go back to God and say, God help me, because you gave me this woman. God help me, you gave me this man. You need to wait on God, I'm telling you. God has something good for you. So let's go on a little bit. So, we talked about last week about how trusting in God, the kingdom way and the covenant can save you from violence. We looked at that in 2 Samuel 22 and 3. We talked about how not trusting in God to bring you what He desires for you can be hypocritical. We looked at that in Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 8 through 10. And if you don't trust God, you will forbid yourself to marry. 1 Timothy 4, 1 through 10. Men have two roles. I want to say this today. I'm going to interject this right here, because I need this on record. Men have two roles when it comes to manhood. Number one, be a eunuch, or two, be a husbandman. I'm going to read Matthew 19 and verse 12 for you real quick, so I can break it down. Because a lot of people don't know what a eunuch is. I'm going to explain it a little bit. Matthew 19 and verse 12. Jesus was asked a question. He was teaching about marriage and divorce. And when Jesus told them that what God had joined together, let not man put asunder, those people who had a problem, they said, well, why did Moses give, this verse 7, why did Moses then give a command to write a divorce and put the wife away? And Jesus said, because of the hardness of your heart. You know, Jesus, I love how he speak, man. He drop it straight into your heart. He don't play. He said, because of the hardness of your heart, Moses suffered you to put away your wife. But from the beginning, it was not so. Jesus said from the beginning, it was not so. And then he said, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committed adultery. So a lot of folks today, they're divorcing their wives because they themselves want to go get some. There was a preacher a few years ago, very popular guy, didn't want to be married anymore. Long story short is he told his wife he was a eunuch and that he couldn't have sexual relations with her anymore. But he was a bishop, so he couldn't divorce her. So he convinced her to divorce him. And 7 days later married his girlfriend. Now how am I going to respect you when this is the life you have? How am I going to respect